When the Mayflower Pilgrims arrived in the New World in 1620 and started to interact with the people living there, their guns served as tools of intimidation rather than as effective killing weapons. This is shown all the way back to their first encounter on the beaches of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, which unfortunately was also their first conflict. They began their exploration of the New World carrying what they needed to survive, as described in books written by William Bradford and Edward Winslow, who were there when the conflict happened, plus insight provided by the 2006 book Mayflower, a story of courage, community, and war. Unfortunately, as shown in the 2006 dramatization Desperate Crossing, the untold story of the Mayflower, the trouble started with them ransacking the homes of the Native Americans who had fled from the armed newcomers. They stole corn from a winter storage pit and dug up the graves of Native Americans, including a child, plus the body of a man who may have been a European sailor. When the sun grew low, they made them a barricade, as usually they did every night, with logs, stakes, and thick pine boughs, the height of a man, leaving it open to leeward, partly to shelter them from the cold and wind, making their fire in the middle, and lying round about it, and partly to defend them from any sudden assaults of the savages, if they should surround them. So being very weary, they betook them to rest. Being both weary and faint, for we had eaten nothing all that day, we fell to making our rendezvous and get firewood, which always costs us a great deal of labor. It was within night, and we fed upon such victuals or food as we had, and betook us to our rest, after we had set out our watch. About midnight we heard a great and hideous cry, and our sentinels called, "Arm! Arm!" So we bestirred ourselves and shot off a couple of muskets, and the noise ceased. We concluded that it was a company of wolves or foxes, for one had told us that he had heard such a noise in Newfoundland. About 5 o'clock in the morning we began to be stirring, and 2 or 3 men, which doubted whether their pieces would go off or no, made trial of them, and shot them off. What kind of pieces were they talking about? Most of them were armed with matchlocks, muskets equipped with long burning wicks that were used to ignite the gun's priming powder. The slow match was a length of cord treated with chemicals to help it burn slowly, presenting a glowing tip on the end that was mechanically lowered into a pan of gunpowder to ignite the charge in the barrel. They were not the most reliable of weapons, particularly in the wet and cold, since it was difficult to keep the powder dry. Good for them their muskets were ready, because after prayer we prepared ourselves for breakfast and for a journey. All upon a sudden we heard a great and strange cry, which we knew to be the same voices as at midnight. One of our company, being abroad, came running in and cried, "They are men! Indians! Indians!" And withal their arrows came flying among us, our first combat with the Indians. Our men ran out with all speed to recover their arms, which they had left by the boat, as by the good providence of God they did. The cry of our enemies was dreadful, especially when our men ran out to recover their arms. Their note was after this manner, "Wawach, wawach, ha ha hach, wawach." Our men were no sooner come to their arms, but the enemy was ready to assault them. Instead of a matchlock, Captain Miles Standish possessed a snaplock, or snaffance, a Dutch improvement of the snaplock, a predecessor to the flintlock, and immediately fired off a round. The snaffance is the earliest form of flintlock, where a cock holds a piece of flint that is released by the trigger to strike a metal frizzen, creating sparks to ignite the gunpowder in the pan. The name staffance was derived from the Dutch word snaffon, meaning snapping hen, a reference to the snapping or pecking action of the hammer against the steel battery. In the meantime, Captain Miles Standish having a snaffons ready, made a shot and after him another. The others dipped their matches into the embers of the fire, and with their matches lit, began to blast away. After they too had shot, other two of us were ready, but he, the captain, wished us not to shoot till we could take aim, for we knew not what need we should have. And there were 4 only of us, which had their arms there ready, and stood before the open side of our barricade, which was first assaulted. They thought it best to defend it, lest the enemy should take it and our stuff, and so have the more vantage against us. Our care was no less for the shallop, the small sailing boat, but we hoped all the rest would defend it. We heard 3 of their pieces go off, and the rest called for a firebrand to light their matches. One of the men in the barricade picked up a burning log from the fire and ran with it to the shallop. An act of bravery that, according to Bradford, did not a little discourage our enemies. There was a lusty man, and no whit less valiant, who was thought to be their captain, stood behind a tree within half a musket shot of us, and there let his arrows fly at us. He was seen to shoot 3 arrows, which were all avoided. For he at whom the first arrow was aimed saw it, and stooped down, and it flew over him. The rest were avoided also. He stood 3 shots of a musket. At length one of the pilgrims took, as he said, full aim at him, after which he gave an extraordinary cry, and away they went all. We followed them about a quarter of a mile, but we left 6 to keep our shallop, for we were careful of our business. Then we shouted all together several times, and shot off a couple of muskets, and so returned. This we did that they might see we were not afraid of them nor discouraged. Unfortunately, that also meant any peaceful relations with the Nauset tribe started off broken and would be difficult to repair later. Thus it pleased God to vanquish our enemies and give us deliverance. By their noise we could not guess that they were less than 30 or 40, though some thought that they were many more. We took up 18 of their arrows, which we have sent to England. Many more, no doubt, were shot. Yet, by the especial providence of God, none of them either hit or hurt us. Though many came close by us and on every side of us, and some coats which hung up in our barricade were shot through and through. So after we had given God thanks for our deliverance, we took our shallop and went on our journey, and called this place the First Encounter. And so, having made a strong but negative first impression on the Native Americans, the Pilgrims sailed on from Cape Cod to find a home closer to the mainland, where they were able to make peace with the other tribes, and eventually with the Nausets themselves. An old plaque at First Encounter Beach has an unsympathetic description of what happened. On December 8, 1620, a party of Pilgrims first met and fought with hostile Indians on this spot. The newer plaque tells the other side of the story. Near this site, the Nauset tribe of the Wampanoag Nation, seeking to protect themselves and their culture, had their first encounter, 8 December 1620. Finally, even though crewman John Alden was not at the first encounter, we should give honorable mention to his Italian wheel-lock carbine. This is believed to be the carbine he brought with him from England. It was originally a 50 caliber rifle, but extensive usage has removed almost all traces of rifling. Discovered during the restoration of Alden's home in Duxbury, Massachusetts in 1924, this short-barreled piece is typical of many European arms possessed by the early New England settlers. Although the colonists' firearms were inaccurate, heavy, and slow to load and fire, these arms had a tremendous effect on the American Indian. After witnessing the value of the firearm for hunting, war, and protection, the American Indians wanted to obtain firearms for themselves, which, as history has shown, was inevitable. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel for new videos every week or two, and see the description below for a list of books and films featured in this video.